Welcome back to another episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother? In this alternate Naruto universe, one small twist changes everything. What if Naruto wasn't alone? What if he grew up with someone stronger, smarter, and born to rewrite destiny itself? Today, we dive deeper into the story of Kaito Uzumaki, Naruto's powerful older brother whose existence shakes the entire Shinobi world. New alliances form, new enemies rise, and the future of Konoha may never be the same again. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because this episode is about to change everything. As Kaito left the training grounds behind, his sandals thudded softly against the packed earth path. The air carried the faint scent of dusty leaves and warm afternoon sunlight, and the quiet was broken only by the occasional chirping of birds scattered across the trees. It didn't take long before the sound of a familiar voice reached his ears. Naruto, yelling something at the top of his lungs, his enthusiasm echoing across the clearing. Kaito stepped out from behind a tree and looked towards the center of the training ground. Naruto stood there, fists clenched, sweat dripping down his tiny face, shouting shadow clone jutsu, with all the determination in the world, and producing absolutely nothing. Beside him, Kaito's shadow clone rubbed its temples with an expression that could only be described as existential suffering. The clone sighed heavily and muttered, "Naruto, we've been over this. You need to feel your chakra first, not scream it out like a crazy person." Naruto stomped his foot in frustration, cheeks puffed out. "I am feeling it," he protested. "It's just not listening to me, Databao." Kaito couldn't help but smile as he approached. "Hey," he called out, waving at his brother. Naruto's head snapped toward him, his tired expression instantly transforming into pure joy. "Big brother. You're done training." Naruto ran up to him, nearly tripping over his own feet on the way. Kaito crouched down to ruffle his hair. Yeah, I'm done. And I kept my promise, didn't I?" he said with a grin. Naruto puffed out his chest proudly. "I trained super hard. Believe it." Kaito's clone dispelled itself in a puff of smoke, but not before muttering, "Finally, freedom." Naruto blinked at the dissipating smoke. "He always says weird stuff," he mumbled. Kaito held back a laugh. "All right, Naruto. Before we start, let me check how much chakra you're leaking." He placed 2 fingers on Naruto's stomach, right where the seal was. Naruto shivered a little. "It tickles," he complained. Yeah, deal with it." Kaito closed his eyes and focused. Even without the Byakugan, Kagura's mind-eye made Naruto's chakra flow appear vividly, like a river crashing violently against sharp rocks. Untamed, erratic, too much for a kid his age. Kaito sighed internally. No wonder he can't make clones. He's overflowing with chakra but can't control any of it. He stood up. "All right, Naruto, step 1. Try not to explode." Naruto blinked. "How?" "Just do what I tell you," Kaito replied, flicking his forehead. "Sit down. Cross your legs. Close your eyes. And stop thinking about ramen." Naruto's eyes snapped open. "How did you know I was thinking about ramen?" "Because you always think about ramen, you menace." Naruto grumbled but obeyed, sitting down on the dirt and closing his eyes with exaggerated seriousness. His little fists clutched the fabric of his shorts, and his face scrunched up in intense concentration. "Okay," Kaito said softly, kneeling beside him. "Imagine a flame inside you. A bright flame. Breathe in, breathe out, and feel that flame getting smaller and smaller." Naruto inhaled loudly, too loudly, and then blew the air out in a dramatic foo. Kaito shot him a deadpan look. "Not like you're blowing out birthday candles." Naruto pouted. "But you said flame." "Small flame, Naruto. Not a campfire." Still, as minutes passed, Kaito watched the chakra inside Naruto shift, slowly, clumsily, like a dog learning to walk for the first time, but there was progress. Naruto sat there trembling with effort, sweat beading on his forehead. "Good. Now hold that feeling," Kaito murmured. Naruto's face twisted. "I think I'm doing it." "Yeah," Kaito said with a proud grin. Now try the shadow clone jutsu. Naruto leapt to his feet and struck the hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke burst out. A second Naruto appeared, except the clone was missing pants, had its headband backwards, and immediately face-planted. Naruto stared at the failed clone. Brother, he whispered, is it supposed to look like that? Kaito pressed his palm against his face. Well, it's progress. The clone groaned and dispelled itself, leaving Naruto blinking at the empty space. And then, I made one. I made a clone. Big brother, did you see? Did you see? Naruto jumped up and down, grabbing Kaito's sleeve and shaking him. I saw, Kaito laughed, gently pushing him back. Keep practicing like that and you'll nail it in no time. Naruto grinned so wide his eyes scrunched shut. Does this mean ramen? He asked hopefully. Kaito smirked. Only if you make 3 clones by the end of the day. Naruto gasped. 3. He dropped to the ground immediately and resumed meditating with the intensity of an old monk fighting for his life. Kaito settled on a tree stump nearby, watching him with a warm, quiet smile. Naruto's small shoulders trembled with effort, but the determination in his eyes never wavered. That's right, little brother, Kaito thought to himself, leaning back against the bark. I'll make you stronger than your canon self. Strong enough to never be alone. Strong enough to survive everything that's coming. And as Naruto tried again, and summoned another clone, this time with pants, Kaito felt something shift inside him. A small spark of hope. A future slightly brighter than the one he remembered. He didn't know for how long he sat there, watching Naruto work his hardest. But for the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. The weight on his chest eased. For now, this was enough. For now, they were safe. And Kaito intended to keep it that way. At any cost. Kaito stared down at the application form in his hands, the crisp paper rustling softly in the afternoon breeze. A small spark of excitement shot through his chest despite his calm outward expression. Chunin exams. Already? He had expected them to be strong enough eventually, but hearing Shikaku say it out loud, it made everything feel real. Itachi's eyes were practically glowing. Finally, he muttered under his breath, gripping the form a little too tightly. Hotaru traced the edge of her own form with her thumb, her pale eyes soft with anticipation and just a hint of nerves. Kaito couldn't help but smirk. What? Hotaru-chan? Nervous already? He teased lightly. Hotaru puffed out her cheeks in mild annoyance. No, just excited, she insisted before adding quietly, and maybe a little nervous. Kaito chuckled, earning an elbow to the ribs from her. Shikaku didn't miss any of it, though he pretended to be examining the koi in the pond. Try to relax a bit, he drawled. This is just the start. The real trouble begins tomorrow. Kaito's eyebrow twitched. Trouble, sensei. Shikaku yawned lazily. Ham. Training for Chunin exams under me is going to be far worse than anything you've done so far. Hotaru and Itachi straightened up immediately. Kaito just sighed internally. Of course. He would say something like that right after giving us a break. Shikaku stood, brushing off his pants. Go home, eat well, sleep early. Tomorrow, we are starting a special regimen. And don't be late. If you're even 1 minute late, you'll regret it. The 3 genin swallowed in unison. Shikaku's laziness was legendary. But so was his training. And the gap in tone told them everything. They were in for hell. Dismissed, Shikaku waved, casually strolling back toward the house to nap, probably. As the trio stepped out of the Nara compound, Itachi let out a small breath. Chunin exams. I didn't think it would finally happen. Hotaru clutched her form to her chest and smiled. We'll do our best together. Kaito hummed thoughtfully. Oh, we'll definitely pass. But first, he cracked his neck lightly, I need to go check on Naruto. Itachi looked slightly amused. Is he still trying to make a proper clone? Kaito facepalmed at the memory of Naruto's half-naked clone from the previous day. You have no idea. They parted ways soon after, Hotaru heading back toward the Hyuga compound and Itachi turning toward the Uchiha district. Kaito waved at them both before leaping up onto the rooftops, moving quickly toward Training Ground 3 where he'd left his shadow clone with Naruto. The moment he landed, he felt it. Naruto's chakra was flaring wildly, like a firecracker lit from both ends. Kaito's eyes shot open. Oh no. As he sprinted toward the clearing, he heard Naruto's voice echo. Shadow clone jutsu. Believe it. Boom. A massive puff of smoke burst forth, shaking the trees. Kaito skidded to a stop and stared. The entire field was covered in Narutos. Some were upside down. Some were arguing. One was chewing dirt. One was trying to climb a tree by hugging it. One was spinning in circles screaming RHH for no reason. And in the middle of all the chaos sat the original Naruto, legs crossed, eyes shining with triumph. Big brother. Look. I did it. Look how many. Believe it. Kaito just stood there, jaw slack. Oh, how the hell did you? His clone walked up to him, looking utterly dead inside. Kill me, it begged before dispelling itself. Kaito slowly turned back to the chaotic field of Narutos, his eye twitching. I told you to make 3. 3, Naruto, not, he counted rapidly, 37. Why are there 37? Naruto puffed up proudly. Because I'm awesome. Databayo. Kaito dragged a hand down his face and groaned. His surpassing canon Naruto way too fast. Still, despite the headache forming behind his eyes, something warm curled in Kaito's chest. Naruto had done it. He had made multiple solid clones, proper clones. For a moment, Kaito couldn't stop the proud smile tugging at his lips. All right, Kaito said, throwing his hands up in surrender. Fine. Let's test how long you can maintain them. Yeah. Believe it. Every clone cheered. Or every clone cheered loudly. Kaito winced. This is going to be a long evening. But as he watched Naruto beam, surrounded by a small army of himself, Kaito felt something settle inside him. Naruto wasn't alone. Not anymore. Not in this timeline. And Kaito would make damn sure it stayed that way. Okay, little brother, Kaito said, cracking his knuckles. Let's start your real training. Naruto pumped his fists into the air with all the enthusiasm in the world. And just like that, the clearing exploded with chaos again. Kaito watched the strange trio melt into the crowd, each name lodged like a pebble in his mind. Mangetsu, Utakata, Chojuro, and a slow grin spread across his face. Good. If the exams are going to be fun, at least they'll be interesting. He glanced down at Hotaru, who walked beside him with a small, thoughtful smile. You okay? He asked. Hotaru nodded, eyes distant for a moment. Hi. It's good. Testing our strength against others will show us where we really are. Her fingers curled unconsciously around the strap of her small satchel. And we will protect our village too. Kaito's chest tightened at her words. Protect the village. Protect his family. The list of reasons he had for getting stronger had grown long and personal. Kushina's soft smile, Naruto's ridiculous confidence, Hotaru's quiet courage. He straightened his shoulders as if they were weapons themselves. Then let's get stronger, he said simply. No more holding back. They continued down the street, passing stalls preparing for the upcoming crowds and children racing one another with wooden swords. Kaito's shadow clone, the one he'd left watching Naruto, would report back tonight with progress notes. He wondered briefly if Naruto had tried to push himself even harder once he heard about the exams. Probably, Kaito decided. Good. Keep that fire lit. By the time they reached the Hyuga compound, the sun was beginning to slope toward the western rooflines. The compound's gates opened with the soft sound of a guarded bow as Hotaru's attendants recognized her. Kaito bowed to them out of politeness and lingered at the entry, uncertain how much farther he should follow her inside. He couldn't help the way his heart tightened at her small, polite smile when she turned. It was childish and fragile and fierce all at once. "See you at practice tomorrow?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied. She nodded, and the gate shut softly behind her. Kaito lingered on the road, watching the compound until it slid from view. Then he jogged back toward the training ground, where Itachi had said something about training with his father, and where Shikaku had promised the special regimen would begin tomorrow. The thought of the regimen made him grin and clench his hands in anticipation. Bring it on. He met Itachi near the old stone well, the Uchiha calm as a still pond. Itachi looked up from a scroll, expression closed as ever. "Shikaku said we start early," he remarked without preamble. Kaito laughed. "I cannot wait. I need to be annoying enough that sensei regrets booking me." He bumped Itachi's shoulder. "And hey, you, me, Hotaru. We'll surprise everyone." Itachi's eyes softened for a breath. "We already surprise more than most teams. But, be careful, Kaito. Don't put everything on your shoulders." Kaito's face sobered. He thought of Kushina, of Naruto curled in their house, of the raw edge of rage the masked man had awakened in him. "I won't," he promised. The words were half for Itachi and half for himself. That night Kaito returned to the Uzumaki residence to find Kushina up late, hunched over a small pile of sewing and a pot of tea cooling beside her. Naruto snored somewhere in the back, exhausted from running and training. Kaito sat opposite his mother, and for a long time they didn't speak, only the soft creak of the house and the distant night calls of the village keeping company. Finally Kushina looked up and smiled that tired, infinite smile that always put him at ease. "You looked good today," she said softly. "You mean terrifyingly intense," Kaito replied with a half-grin. "But thanks." She reached across and ruffled his hair. "Just be careful, okay? Hiruzen is doing his best to keep things calm, but the world's getting noisy. Be smart. Don't let anger lead." Her fingers lingered at his brow as if she could smooth his worries away. He thought of Danzo's sneer, of the masked man's hollow laugh, of the promise he had made alone in the dark to protect his family. Anger did burn bright in him, but so, now, did purpose. "I will," he said. "I promise." Kushina nodded, satisfied for the moment, and turned back to her sewing. Kaito lay awake later that night, staring at the ceiling while the village slept. He let his mind catalogue tasks, improve shadow clone control, refine the immobilized tandem seals, increase Naruto's stamina, make sure Kakashi recovered. Most of all, he thought about the month ahead, a month of training, of sharpening, of being tested and tested again. Morning came and with it the first whistle of Shikaku's regimen. The Nara Jonin met them at the training field with a simple hand sign and that same lazy, dangerous look that meant business. Around them the village hummed with the rumors of the exams, teams arriving, scouts whispering of powerful opponents, a nervous excitement settling into the air. Shikaku clapped his hands once. "All right, 1 month to get you 3 ready for a fight that will show the world who you are. If you want soft training, go play with the puppies. If you want to survive a Chunin exam, pay attention." Kaito's heart hammered in an answer. Around him, Itachi and Hotaru fell into place like the edges of a well-worn plan. The sun climbed, dust rose, and the 3 of them dove into the first drill, endless shadow clone sparring, ceiling array work, stamina runs that left their muscles humming for hours. When the sun settled behind the trees that evening, Kaito's arms ached, his lungs burned, and yet he felt more awake than he ever had. Naruto's shadow clones would wait for him tomorrow, takoyaki would be devoured after practice, and the exams would inch closer. But something steadied under everything, a sense that he, and those he loved, were no longer at the mercy of fate. He looked up at the brightening stars and allowed himself a small, private grin. 1 month, he thought. We'll make it count. Kaito smirked faintly as he watched Mangetsu work. Using water as a mirror to relay answers, and slipping them to his teammates without even lifting his head. He had expected Mangetsu to be skilled, but there was something sharp and calculating behind the boy's lazy-looking eyes. It wasn't brute force talent. It was discipline, control, and a dangerous amount of intelligence. So that's the level of Kirigaku's prodigies. Good. It made Kaito's blood stir with anticipation. His senses brushed over Chojuro next. The boy trembled every time Inoichi walked past, but his pencil never stopped moving. He had double-checked every answer 3 times over. And Utakata was practically lounging in his seat, blowing small bubbles from the chakra-soaked foam between his fingers. The bubbles drifted lazily through the air, each one catching tiny slips of writing before popping harmlessly in his lap. A subtle, almost elegant cheating method. Kaito huffed quietly. Yeah, this exam won't be boring. Across the room, genin from various villages were already losing their composure. Whispered curses, shaky breath, suppressed panic. His senses picked up every emotional flutter. Kaito listened absently to someone on his left muttering under their breath, trembling so hard their pencil tapped the desk like a ticking clock. Moments later. Team 41. Disqualified. Gasps followed as 3 hopefuls were escorted out, one of them protesting loudly. The room's tension spiked, tightening like a noose. Even the air felt thinner. But Kaito sat there, chin propped on one hand, eyes closed as if half asleep. He could imagine how this must look to Kiri's kids, especially Mangetsu, who kept cutting glances toward him whenever Inoichi passed. The Hazuki boy wasn't subtle about sizing him up. Good. Watch closely, Kaito thought, amusement tugging at the corner of his mouth. Take your notes now, because during the combat rounds, I won't be this friendly. The clock ticked down to the final minutes when Inoichi finally clapped his hands sharply. Pens down. Time is up. Paper rustled as everyone obeyed. A collective breath seemed to be held across the room. Inoichi's sharp eyes swept over them all. If your team remains seated, it means none of you earned a 0, and you passed the first phase. A hush fell. Then, a few groans. A few sighs. Some muffled swearing from the back. Kaito leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking as he heard Chojuro practically collapse in relief while Utakata muttered, "Too easy." Itachi didn't react at all, just stood quietly and waited for the next instructions. Hotaru exhaled softly, her expression composed but her shoulders relaxing just a little. Kaito didn't bother hiding the warmth that touched him at the sight. Inoichi rolled up the final stack of papers and announced, "On to the second phase. Proctor Mitarashi will be waiting outside. Move out." And just like that, the entire room erupted into motion, dozens of genin filing out in a chaotic wave of tension and adrenaline. Kaito stood, stretching his arms overhead. Well, he said to himself, a grin stretching slowly, time for the part one actually care about. Because now came the forest. Now came combat. And now came the chance to see for himself just how dangerous Kirigaku's rising prodigies really were, and how far Team 11 could push past them. Kaito stepped into the hallway, Hotaru and Itachi falling into place behind him. The Chunin exams had truly begun. Kaito adjusted the strap of his tanto and let his eyes sweep across the crowd gathering outside the forest of death's massive iron gates. Most teams were whispering nervously among themselves, clutching their scrolls as though they might burn their hands at any second. The atmosphere was thick, not just with tension, but with the quiet, electric fear of the unknown. Team 11, however, stood a little apart. Calm. Steady. Focused. Itachi held their heaven scroll loosely at his side, almost carelessly, as though he weren't aware of the dozens of hungry eyes watching him from across the clearing. Hotaru stood tall with her arms behind her back, her posture straight and steady, breathing slow and measured, but Kaito could still sense her chakra subtly shifting, ready to activate Byakugan at a moment's notice. And Kaito leaned back against the boulder, humming softly as though this were nothing more than a school field trip. Inside, though, his chakra senses were sharper than ever. Every heartbeat in the clearing. Every breath. Every flicker of hostility. And there were many. Good. Let them look. Let them stare. Let them think Team 11 is underestimating the forest of death. It would make the next 5 days more entertaining. Shibi Aburame stepped forward at last. If you have signed your forms, submit them now and prepare yourselves. We will open the gates shortly. One by one, Genin lined up to turn in their consent forms, the tension building with each passing second, and the number of nervous gulps increasing exponentially. Kaito, Hotaru, and Itachi slipped theirs into the submission box without hesitation. Shibi watched them. Longer than he watched anyone else. Your team, he murmured behind his high collar, carries themselves differently than the others. Itachi bowed slightly. We hope to meet your expectations, Aburame-san. Shibi stared a moment longer, the buzzing of insects under his cloak rising for just an instant. A subtle, instinctive reaction to his curiosity, before he turned away. Kaito smirked. Even Shibi noticed. As Team 11 regrouped near the tree line, Kaito spoke quietly, just loud enough for his teammates to hear over the noise of the crowd. Stick to the plan. We head straight to the tower. Itachi takes point. Hotaru uses Byakugan every few minutes. I'll suppress my chakra to keep us off most senses. Hotaru nodded. Understood. Itachi rolled his shoulders lightly. There will be ambushes. There better be, Kaito muttered, grinning. Otherwise this is going to be boring. A rustle of movement on their right made all three of them shift their eyes subtly. Mangetsu and his team had approached the submission booth. Mangetsu glanced their way, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Chojuro shrank behind Mangetsu like a scared rabbit, while Utakata casually blew a bubble with no concern at all. Their eyes met for just a moment. Mangetsu smirked. Kaito smirked back. Hotaru exhaled softly. We will fight them eventually. Hopefully, Kaito replied. I want to see how good they really are. A sudden shrill whistle cut through the air. Shibi raised his hand. Participants of the second stage. His voice was calm but carried across the clearing with ease. Enter the forest of death. With a heavy groan, the massive iron gates began to slide open, revealing a dark, shadowy maze of trees, twisting vines, and thick fog. The scent of moss and damp earth drifted out like the exhale of some enormous creature. The forest itself felt alive. Hungry. Waiting. Before anyone could take a step forward, Shibi lifted a finger. And one more thing, he added quietly. Do remember, the forest does not care whether you live or die. The gates finished opening with a deep metallic clank. All at once. Teams surged forward in a chaotic wave. Kaito pushed off the boulder. All right, he said calmly. Showtime. Hotaru and Itachi flanked him instantly. Team 11 stepped through the gates, swallowed by the shadows of Training Ground 44. Somewhere behind them, a whisper drifted through the crowd from a trembling genin. Those three from Konoha, they're monsters. Kaito grinned without looking back. And the forest of death closed its mouth behind them. Itachi and Hotaru glanced down at the objects Kaito had tossed into their hands. Each of them held a small, circular seal disc, thin metal plates inscribed with intricate spiraling patterns. The Uzumaki crest glowed faintly at the center of each one. Kaito-kun, what are these? Hotaru asked, brows furrowing as she examined the seal. Kaito's expression hardened, all traces of his usual calm wiped away. Signal seals, he explained, voice low. Break them, and I'll know exactly where you both are, instantly. No matter where you are in the forest. Itachi narrowed his eyes. A location beacon? When did you make these? I've been preparing for something like this, Kaito replied bluntly. Just in case Danzo tried something during the exam. Hotaru's eyes widened slightly. So, you knew this might happen? I hoped it wouldn't, Kaito admitted, tension creeping into his voice. But Root always makes a move when they think it's safe. And with all the teams spread out, no cameras deep inside the forest, this is the perfect opportunity for him. Itachi slipped the seal disc into his pouch. Meaning the only reason they'd be coming directly toward us is because someone told them exactly where you would be. Kaito snorted softly. Root has their ways. Hotaru stepped closer, her Byakugan still active, pupils shrinking as she tracked the approaching signatures. Kaito-kun, they're closing in quickly. Less than 1 kilometer now. Kaito turned toward the direction of the incoming ANBU, his chakra flaring with cold determination. "Then we stick to the plan," he said. Hotaru blinked. Or what plan? You didn't tell us anything yet." Kaito exhaled hard, then jabbed a thumb toward the scroll strapped to Itachi's back. "You two continue toward the tower. Ambush teams. Get the Earth Scroll. Complete the mission." Hotaru stared at him. "While you take on 7 ANBU. Kaito gave a humorless smile. "I said go on ahead. Not abandon me." Itachi's eyes narrowed. Meaning, Kaito continued, voice steady, "I'll slow them down. Distract them. Draw them away from the tower's path." Hotaru's breath caught. "You want to lead them away, alone?" Kaito nodded once. "Root's objective is me. Not you two. If I break off, they'll follow." Itachi clenched his jaw. "That doesn't make the odds any better." Kaito smirked faintly. "Who said I'm fighting them head-on?" Both teammates blinked. Kaito pointed to the forest canopy above them. "This terrain is perfect. Dense trees. Heavy fog. Chakra pressure pockets. And the ANBU don't know where the seals I planted are." Hotaru blinked again, confused. "Seals?" Kaito deadpanned. "Yes. Seals. I've had a week." Itachi exhaled slowly. "Of course you did." Hotaru's lips twitched. "Only you would trap the forest of death before the exam even began." Kaito shrugged. "Preparation is survival." Hotaru's eyes darted toward the direction of the approaching chakra signatures. "They're only 600 meters now." Kaito turned to both of them, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. His voice softened slightly, just barely, but enough to show he meant every word. "You two are my team. My friends. I'm not letting Root touch either of you." Hotaru's eyes widened with emotion, and Itachi looked away, jaw tightening. "But listen carefully," Kaito continued. "If things go wrong, if I'm delayed, or if something unexpected happens." He nodded toward their pouches. "Break the seal. I'll come to you immediately." Itachi's gaze sharpened. "Kaito." "I mean it," Kaito said firmly. "If you're ambushed, or injured, or separated, break it. Don't hesitate." Hotaru swallowed, gripping the seal disc tightly. "We understand." The ground vibrated softly. A faint rustle of leaves. A shift in the wind. Itachi's eyes narrowed. "They're close." Hotaru activated her Byakugan fully, veins bulging around her eyes. 500 meters. Kaito exhaled one final time. "All right." He stepped backward off the branch, letting gravity pull him down into the shadows below. "I'll see you at the tower." Itachi called out sharply, "Kaito." Hotaru reached out instinctively, "Kaito-kun." But Kaito only offered a sharp grin before disappearing into the forest canopy with a flicker of crimson hair. And just like that, he was gone. Itachi and Hotaru remained frozen for a breath, processing his sudden departure. Then Itachi turned sharply. "Hotaru. We go." "Hi." The two of them leapt deeper into the forest, moving toward the tower without looking back. Hotaru murmured anxiously, "Do you think he'll be all right?" Itachi's expression hardened. "We'll do our mission. Kaito will do his." Hotaru swallowed. "They're ANBU, Itachi-kun." Itachi's fingers brushed the seal disc inside his pouch. Kaito isn't exactly normal either. Meanwhile, somewhere high above, masked shadows landed silently on a thick branch. 7 figures. Identical uniforms. White masks. Emotionless. Purposefully coordinated. Root. The one in front raised 2 fingers. Target detected. And far ahead of them, standing calmly with his hands in his pockets, Kaito Uzumaki smiled coldly. "All right, Danzo, let's play." Kaito's vision swam. Colors bled together. His limbs felt heavy, useless. Every breath burned in his chest as the poison gnawed deeper into his system. The panda-masked root operative lifted him higher by his hair, forcing Kaito to look up at him. "TCH. Uzumaki or not, you kids always run your mouths," the ANBU scoffed. "Let's see how cocky you are when Lord Danzo carves those pretty chakra chains out of your spine." Clang! A kunai whistled out of nowhere, slamming into the panda-mask's hand and forcing him to release Kaito. "What?" Kaito fell, but Itachi caught him by the shoulder, barely staying upright himself. The poison was eating at both of them, turning every movement sluggish. But Itachi's eyes were hard, unwavering. Hotaru lay limp but breathing against a tree trunk. "Itachi," Kaito croaked, voice barely a whisper. "Put me down. You can't fight holding me." Itachi gritted his teeth, ignoring him. On the branches above them, the remaining 6 root agents repositioned silently, their masks gleaming between the canopy shadows. "Proceed with the mission," one of them ordered coldly. "Eliminate the 2 liabilities. Retrieve Uzumaki alive." Even poisoned and half-conscious, Kaito's blood boiled. "All liabilities?" His chakra flickered violently in response, struggling against the poison suppressing it. The panda mask shook his injured hand once before stepping forward again. "You kids should feel honored. Most targets don't even know they're dying before it hap." A faint whistle cut him off. F-whip. A kunai appeared at Panda Mask's throat. No, not appeared. It was placed there, so fast neither poisoned boy registered it. And behind the mask, the ANBU stiffened. "Kaito," Itachi said firmly, his voice steady even as his legs trembled. "Listen carefully." He lowered Kaito gently against the roots of a tree, Hotaru just beside him. "You said it earlier," Itachi continued, standing tall despite the poison threatening to drag him down. "There is no point in arguing with us." Kaito's foggy vision struggled to focus. "Oh, Itachi, don't." But Itachi didn't look back. He raised his kunai, turning to face 7 elite assassins alone. "The plan hasn't changed," he said calmly. "I lead. Hotaru supports. You finish." Panda Mask tilted his head. "Pathetic. Even poisoned, he postures." But Itachi's tone sharpened, slicing through the tension like a blade. "Besides." He exhaled, and the oppressive stillness of the forest seemed to buckle around him. "Oh, you made one mistake." Root shifted uneasily. Itachi's eyes opened fully, dark and razor-sharp even without the Sharingan. "You touched my teammate." A silent wind swept through the forest. And for the first time, the ANBU hesitated. Even poisoned, even unarmed, even with death closing in. Itachi Uchiha's killing intent flooded the entire clearing. Cold. Precise. Unshakable. The Panda Mask scoffed, raising his blade. "Kill the Uchiha fur." Crack. A tree branch overhead snapped, and a shadow shot down like a falling star. Root masks turned too late. A fist wrapped in red lightning split the air, slamming into Panda Mask's ribs with enough force to cave a boulder. Boom. The operative was launched across the clearing, smashing through 2 trees before disappearing into the distance. The forest went dead silent. The remaining ANBU froze. Because in the dust cloud now standing between Itachi and Root, Kaito stood upright, chakra raging like a storm. The wound in his hand still bled, but thin golden seals crawled over his skin, pulsing violently. Itachi blinked. "Oh, Kaito." Kaito cracked his neck once, lightning still humming around his arm. Poison or not, Uzumaki vitality was monstrous. And the seals on his spine had activated on instinct, force purging the toxins as raw chakra flared out of him like a living beast. He wiped blood from his mouth. "You assholes." His voice was steady, dangerously calm. "Oh, you dared to poison my team." The forest shook. Even Root took a wary step back at the sudden surge of chakra. Hotaru stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open. Itachi allowed himself the smallest, sharpest breath of relief. Kaito rolled his shoulders, his gaze narrowing into a predatory gleam. "All right," he growled, chakra chains materializing behind him with a metallic snarl. I was planning to avoid unnecessary noise. A red, lightning-coated tanto burst into existence in his hand. But since Danzo wants me that badly. He pointed the blade at the 6 root operatives still standing. Oh come. The air cracked. Let's see if you're strong enough to take me. The captain of the root squad staggered, clutching the bleeding stump where his arm had been moments ago. His breath came in harsh rasps beneath the panda-patterned mask. Despite the pain, despite the deaths of his subordinates, hatred burned in his eyes. You brats, he growled, voice trembling with fury. You think you've won? Kaito tilted his head slightly, crimson bangs swaying as he narrowed his eyes. You're the last one standing, he replied calmly, twirling his blood-stained tanto in his hand. I'd say that means something, why no? The captain spat blood and straightened his posture, refusing to back down. Lord Danzo will. Kaito interrupted with a lazy flick of his wrist. I don't care about Danzo, he said, voice flat and cold. He sent you to kill my team. Lightning crackled faintly around the tanto in his hand. Behind him, the chakra chains slowly retracted into the ground like metallic serpents returning to sleep. That's all I need to know. The captain made a last desperate decision. He brought his remaining hand together in a single, rapid clap. Wind release, vacuum destroyer. A massive, swirling blade of compressed wind exploded forward, slicing through trees and ripping the earth apart in its path. The forest howled as the air pressure dropped violently. But Kaito didn't move. He simply exhaled. A seal flared beneath his feet, one of his own custom ones, drawn in the blink of an eye. Barrier seal, crimson dome. Red lightning flared in a circular pattern, forming a half-spherical shield that absorbed the tornado of wind. The violent gale screamed against the barrier, the seal crackling and sparking, but Kaito remained perfectly still. When the jutsu dissipated, the forest fell silent again. Kaito lowered his hand. Oh, that all? The captain froze. His ace, his strongest technique, had done nothing. Not even scratched the boy. Fear crept into the man's posture for the first time. You, monster. Kaito vanished. No, he moved. So fast the ANBU couldn't register the displacement until the boy's breath brushed against his ear. Wrong. Kaito whispered just behind him. I'm an Uzumaki. The captain spun, swinging his sword wildly with his remaining hand. But Kaito's tanto sliced through the blade like it was made of paper. Metal clattered to the ground. Then came the kick. A brutal, precise roundhouse that cracked ribs and hurled the masked man across the clearing. He smashed through a tree trunk, skidding through the dirt before finally stopping, gasping for breath. Kaito walked toward him, slow, calm, each step echoing like a death knell. The captain struggled to push himself up. You think killing us stops Root? Kaito crouched in front of him. His eyes weren't angry. They were empty. I know it won't. Lightning crackled again along his blade. But it sends a message. The captain's mask reflected the red glow of the lightning-coated tanto. That if Danzo touches my family again. Kaito brought the blade up. I'll burn Root to the ground. Sheeing. One clean slash. The panda mask split in half. And the captain's body went limp. A long silence followed, broken only by the faint crackle of fading lightning. Kaito exhaled slowly, letting his chakra settle. He wiped the blood off the tanto on the captain's cloak before sealing it away. Only then did he turn his attention back toward the distant explosions and shockwaves he'd sensed earlier. Time to regroup. With a light step, he flickered through the trees toward his team. Meanwhile, the forest canopy rustled as Kaito landed in a clearing scorched black by fire. Trees were cracked, burned, and uprooted. Itachi stood there, chest rising and falling with effort, a kunai dripping with blood in one hand. Beyond him lay 3 root bodies, charred, severed, and very much dead. Itachi turned when he sensed Kaito approach. Kaito-kun, he said quietly, wiping the blade clean. You done. Kaito nodded. Yeah. You. Itachi glanced at the corpses. Oh hi. Kaito breathed out in relief. Good. Hotaru appeared through the smoke a moment later, wiping a smear of dirt from her cheek, her Byakugan still active and glowing faintly. A single unconscious, but alive, root agent was slumped at her feet. Her ponytail swayed as she approached. I kept one alive, she said calmly. Just in case we need information. Kaito nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Itachi exhaled, relaxing slightly now that they were all together. A live one will cause problems if he escapes. Hotaru responded smoothly, he won't. Kaito gave a small smirk. Well then. He turned toward the direction of the tower looming at the forest center. Oh, how about we finish this exam now? Hotaru nodded, stepping closer. Hi. Itachi adjusted his tanto and joined them. Let's move. Team 11 flickered into the trees, silent, deadly, working in perfect sync, as the forest of death swallowed their trail behind them. Kaito's smirk lingered for only a moment before he turned away from the retreating root captain, brushing a loose strand of red hair behind his ear. Itachi and Hotaru shared a brief glance, both confused, both uneasy, before instinct pushed them to follow Kaito's stride deeper into the forest. But even as Kaito walked, there was a quiet chill in the air. Because far behind them, in the direction the root captain had fled, a faint metallic click echoed beneath the rustling of leaves. Then, boom! A violent explosion erupted in the distance, lighting the forest with a brief flash of orange. The shockwave rolled through the trees, bending branches and scattering burnt leaves across the undergrowth. Birds cried out and scattered overhead. Hotaru flinched as the blast reverberated through her chest. Itachi merely narrowed his eyes. Kaito didn't even turn around. He simply raised 2 fingers, showing the faint red glow of a sealing mark on his knuckle. Tracking seal, Kaito said casually, continuing his steps without a single backward glance. I tagged him the moment I kicked him through the tree. Itachi blinked. Hotaru's eyes widened. Kaito grinned. And I also set a remote detonation seal on that tracking mark. Just in case, why no? Hotaru swallowed softly. So you planned this from the beginning? Kaito shrugged, hands sliding into his pockets. If someone tries to assassinate me and my team, I expect them to run when things go bad. Might as well make the chase easier. Itachi stared at Kaito's back for a long moment, then spoke quietly. You're surprisingly ruthless. Kaito didn't stop walking. Only when people try to kill the people I care about. Hotaru's cheeks warmed slightly at that, not because of romance, but because she understood the weight behind his words. The sincerity. The conviction. Itachi nodded once, accepting that answer without judgment. The 3 of them moved swiftly through the forest canopy as the last rays of daylight painted the sky in warm, fading colors. Their movements were synchronized, fluid, almost silent, like a well-trained unit of elite shinobi rather than a trio of genin. After several minutes of leaping from branch to branch, Kaito slowed and came to a stop atop a tall tree overlooking the vast treetops ahead. The massive tower stood in the far distance, a dark silhouette nestled in the center of the forest of death. Kaito exhaled. There it is. Hotaru activated her Byakugan, scanning the area. Her pale eyes focused, shifting as she examined every movement within a 2-kilometer radius. No enemy teams nearby, she reported softly. We should have a clear path. Itachi tightened the strap of his tanto and stepped forward. Then let's finish this. Kaito nodded and prepared to move again. But then something tugged at his senses. A subtle shift in chakra. Faint. Weak. Panicked. Kaito's Kagura mind's eye flickered outward, expanding its perception like ripples across the water. And he felt it. One familiar chakra signature. Weak. Unstable. In pain. His expression hardened. Oh wait. Hotaru and Itachi paused immediately. What is it? Itachi asked. Kaito's voice dropped to a low, controlled tone. There's someone ahead of us, he said. A genin. Alone. Hurt. Hotaru's eyebrows knitted with concern. Another team's survivor. Kaito shook his head slowly. No. This chakra, it's someone I've sensed before. Itachi's eyes sharpened. Who? Kaito raised his gaze toward the direction of the faint signature. Chojuro. Itachi immediately understood. Hotaru's eyes widened. The shy one from Kirigakure? He was with Mangetsu and Utakata. Kaito frowned. Either they got ambushed, or something went very wrong. The three of them exchanged tense glances. Kaito nodded once. We'll go check it out. But stay alert. Without another word, Team 11 shot off toward the faint chakra signature, silent, swift, and deadly focused. The tower could wait. Someone was in danger. And Team 11 didn't abandon people. Not in their forest. Not during their exam. Not while they still drew breath. Shikaku's fingers closed around the scroll like a man holding a smoldering coal, careful, deliberate, and unwilling to be burned. He unrolled it with the same measured calm he used at the shogi board, eyes scanning the neat, cold handwriting. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and iron. At the bottom, stamped with a crude, familiar sigil, was a single line. You meddled. He will come for blood. D. A long silence stretched between them. The tower hummed with the distant murmurs of other teams and the creak of settling wood. Hotaru's breath fogged in the cool night air. Itachi's face was unreadable as always. Only Kaito's grin refused to die, but it had lost any hint of mischief. Something harder and colder sat behind his eyes. Shikaku looked up slowly, his expression sharpening. Danzo, then, he said, low. The single word carried the weight of an accusation and the weary anger of a man who had watched rot grow where it ought not to be. Kaito shrugged, casual as ever. He's not subtle, sensei. He never was. Itachi's voice cut through, quiet and precise. He will not come openly. He moves through shadows and men who do not answer to the Hokage. We should assume this is not just a warning, it's an initiation. Hotaru swallowed and hugged her arms close. What should we do? Shikaku pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. First, you three get rest and tend to your wounds. You pushed hard today. He glanced at the tower wall where the forest moonlight pooled like silver water. Second, do not move from Konoha unless I send word. This will draw eyes. Kaito's jaw tightened. I won't cower in the village like some rabbit. You won't be asked to, Shikaku answered. You'll be asked to be smart. Let me handle the politics. You handle the fighting. A muscle ticked in Kaito's cheek. And if the politics lie to us again? If Hiruzen decides it's simpler to sweep it under the mat? Shikaku's stare was steady and unamused. Then we make them uncomfortable enough that they have to act. Itachi's hand found the strap of his tanto and flexed. If Danzo uses root, the village will be stained. We cannot let that become commonplace. Hotaru's Byakugan flickered faintly as she looked between them. We should tell Fugaku, she offered softly. Kaito's head snapped toward her. Fugaku? You want to light a fire under an already burning pile? He shook his head, thinking of faces in the Hokage's council settling into defense. No. Not yet. Shikaku's mind moved through a dozen moves at once, Nara's logic settling over his features. We'll do this subtly. I'll send a word to Hiruzen, a careful, calibrated report. I'll not make it a summary that can be buried. I'll make it a letter that forces a response. Meanwhile, you three lay low. Train in secret. Strengthen what you can. Danzo and his men prey on chaos. We will remove the chaos. Kaito let out a slow breath, anger flickering into something like acceptance. Fine. But if he touches my family, I'll. You'll do what you must, Shikaku said, softer now. But remember, there's a difference between righteous fury and being useful. He crouched and looked each of them in the eye. You have talent, and more importantly, you have a bond. Use both. Danzo underestimates bonds. Itachi inclined his head. We don't underestimate. Hotaru's lips quivered into the barest of smiles. Hi. Kaito folded his arms and looked up at the moon. The tower's silhouette cut the sky, a dark spear against silver. He could picture Danzo's face, the smug, practiced cruelty, the hand that would trade lives like coins. He could picture the masked man, Obito, or whoever hid behind that name, and the cold slit of a Sharingan watching from the dark. His resolve hardened into a blade. Then train, he said. Tonight we sharpen. Tomorrow we get stronger. And when that bastard finally shows his face, he's going to remember why he should have stayed dead. Shikaku smirked despite himself. You always sound like a drama piece, Kaito. Troublesome, he muttered, but his eyes held approval. They descended from the tower in silence, each mind already running through drills and contingencies. Hotaru tucked her ear clip away, fingers lingering on the discreet seal Kaito had given them. Itachi's gaze drifted toward the western tree line, instinctively reading paths and cover. Kaito flexed his fingers where the tanto rested at his back, feeling the familiar hum of his seals waiting to be unleashed. Outside, the forest of death breathed around them, ancient, indifferent, dangerous. Inside the tower, Shikaku penned a short, sharp note to the Hokage. No accusations, only facts. He would leave the rest to timing and pressure. Before they parted, Kaito lingered with his two teammates. He met Itachi's eyes, then Hotaru's, and said, quietly, we train like our lives, and the village, depend on it. Because they do. They nodded. As they walked away, shadows pooled under the trees and shifted like living things, but none of them were Root. Not yet. Far to the north, someone wrapped in a cloak stared at a distant flicker of light and turned away with a small, thin smile. Good. The voice whispered into a receiver no one heard but one. Let them believe they have time. Kaito didn't hear the whisper. He wouldn't. Not yet. He had ramen plans, a training drill, and a family to protect. But the hunt had tightened, and the first pieces were moving into place. Tomorrow, they would begin to sharpen the knife. Shikaku didn't bother waiting to see whether they followed. He just turned and started walking toward the exit hallway, hands tucked lazily into his pockets. Team 11 hurried after him, weaving between the lingering jonin and proctors as the large hall buzzed with chatter. Kaito took in the atmosphere with a small hum, tense genin comparing notes, jonin sizing up the competition, Maitarumi laughing softly with her students, Mangetsu cracking his knuckles like he was already bored of everyone present. Itachi walked quietly beside Hotaru, absorbing everything with a sharp, calculating gaze. Once they stepped outside the tower, a warm breeze brushed past them, carrying the faint scent of pines. The sky was deepening into twilight, streaked with pink and violet. So, Shikaku began, scratching the back of his head lazily, we'll grab something to eat first. Then we'll talk about your training schedules. Kaito grinned. Ramen. Shikaku gave him a flat look. I was thinking barbecue. Kaito blinked. Sensei, are you rich? I'm Genin-sitter rich, Shikaku replied dryly. Don't push it. Hotaru giggled softly. Itachi allowed the faintest hint of a smile. They made their way back toward the village, the path illuminated by hanging lanterns as night slowly settled. The adrenaline of the exams had worn off, replaced by a comfortable exhaustion. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was the kind that existed only between comrades who trusted each other. As they neared the main gate of Konoha, Shikaku suddenly stopped. Kaito and the others halted behind him. Before we go in, Shikaku said quietly, turning just enough to look at them over his shoulder, I want you three to understand something. His voice had lost its lazy tone. Your success in the second test was impressive. Too impressive. And what happened with Root will not stay quiet forever. Kaito's jaw tightened slightly. Itachi's eyes narrowed in thought. Hotaru lowered her gaze, fingers curling lightly. Shikaku continued, from now on, people will be watching you. Not just Danzo's remnants. Other villages. Other clans. The council. Even our own ANBU. He let out a sigh and shoved his hands deeper into his pockets. You three are geniuses, prodigies. And prodigies tend to attract the wrong kind of attention. Kaito looked past Shikaku at the glowing village beyond the gate. We can handle it. All of it. I know you think that, Shikaku muttered, but part of my job is making sure you stay alive long enough to actually become Chunin. So listen carefully. He faced them fully. For the next month, you three keep a low profile. No flashy displays unless necessary. No wandering off alone. And definitely no provoking anyone, especially not politically powerful idiots. Kaito coughed into his hand. Wasn't my fault, technically. Shikaku gave him a look. Kaito, you literally detonated an explosive seal on Danzo's man. Yeah, but technically. No. Just, no. Stop talking. Hotaru stifled a small laugh behind her hand. Itachi's lips quirked upward in silent agreement. Shikaku sighed again. Just, behave. At least until the finals. He pointed toward the village. All right. Let's eat. You three earned it. They continued walking toward the restaurant district, lantern lights reflecting in their eyes as the night deepened. Civilians bustled about, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the peaceful surface. Kaito walked a little ahead of the group, hands behind his head as he smirked up at the sky. 1 month, he muttered to himself. A whole month to prepare, and a whole month for Danzo to stew in his own paranoia. Itachi glanced at him. He will act again. Yeah, Kaito agreed. I'm counting on it. Hotaru tugged lightly on his sleeve. But we'll face it together, right? Kaito turned to her, expression softening. You already know the answer. Itachi nodded. We don't leave teammates behind. Shikaku overheard and groaned. Troublesome, you're going to give me grey hair. You already have some, Kaito replied innocently. Shikaku glared. Kaito. Sensei. Kaito. Sensei tilde. Hotaru sighed fondly. Itachi looked away to hide the small smile tugging at his mouth. As they turned a corner, the warm glow of yakiniku Q filled their vision. The sizzling aroma of grilled meat drifted through the air. Kaito pumped his fist. Yes. Meat. Shikaku muttered something about hyperactive Uzumakis but went inside anyway. For now, they were just students again. For now, they had a moment of peace. The storm would come later. And when it did, Team 11 would be ready. Kaito eagerly unwrapped the dango pack as he settled into his usual spot at the kitchen table. Kushina followed him in, humming softly as she poured 2 cups of tea, setting one beside him before taking the seat across from him. Naruto dragged a chair noisily and sat right next to Kaito, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Okay, Kainai, tell us everything. Naruto demanded, leaning forward like he was about to hear a legendary war story. Kaito smirked. All right. Don't rush me, brat. Kushina giggled behind her teacup. Just start from the beginning, you know. Kaito gave her a helpless look. Mom, there was a lot that happened. Then start talking, Kushina said cheerfully, resting her chin on her palm. I've been waiting all week for this. So Kaito began recounting his story, from the written exam where he and his team effortlessly scored top marks, to the absolute chaos in the Forest of Death. He left out the root assassination attempt for now. That was something Kushina would find out soon enough, but dropping that bomb right at the kitchen table with Naruto around didn't seem like the best idea. Naruto hung on to every word, especially when Kaito described ambushing the Kiri team. What art? You beat a whole team just like that? Naruto gasped with wide eyes. Kaito snorted. Please. They walked into their own traps. I didn't even get to stretch. Kushina beamed with pride. That's my son, she said, voice softening with warmth. Just like your father, calm, fast, and ridiculously efficient. Kaito rubbed the back of his head with a sheepish grin. Well, maybe. Naruto tugged at Kaito's sleeve. When I'm a ninja, you gotta teach me everything too. Believe it. You gotta stay awake first, Kaito teased, flicking Naruto's forehead. Or mom's gonna knock you out again. I only fell asleep twice. Naruto protested loudly. 5 times, Kushina corrected flatly. Naruto blinked. How? Kaito snorted as he sipped his tea. The atmosphere in the kitchen was warm, lively, the kind of peace Kaito wished could last forever. But peace rarely lasted in the shinobi world. After a while, Kushina leaned forward, elbows on the table. So the finals are in a month? She asked. Hi, Kaito confirmed. Itachi will train with his clan, Hotaru with hers. And I'll be training with Kakashi nii. Kushina nodded approvingly. Good choice. Kakashi learned under your father, even if he's lazy sometimes, he's brilliant. Kaito hummed in agreement. Naruto then cupped his chin with exaggerated seriousness. Then I guess I'll train too. I'll get super strong and surprise everyone. Kaito grinned. Oh? And who's gonna train you, Naruto puffed out his chest. Mom. Of course. She's strong. Kushina's giggle was equal parts proud and embarrassed. Well, I can teach him basic chakra control and sealing, you know. Kaito raised an eyebrow. If he stays awake. Naruto immediately slapped his cheeks. I'll stay awake. I promise, he shouted, voice echoing through the house. Kushina burst into laughter. All right, Naruchan, all right. The family moment lasted a few minutes longer before Kushina stood up and stretched. Kai-kun, you must be tired. Go shower and rest. Tomorrow marks the beginning of your 1-month training. Naruto hopped off the chair energetically. I'll train too. After you clean your room, Kushina said sweetly. Naruto froze. EA. Kaito smirked. Good luck with that. Naruto pouted as he stomped off, muttering something about unfair parents. Kaito gathered the leftover dango skewers and tossed them in the trash. Kushina walked over, wrapping her arms around him in a tight, warm hug. Kai-kun, she whispered, voice tinged with both love and something else, something deeper. I'm proud of you. Every day. Kaito relaxed into the embrace, closing his eyes. Thanks, Mom. She held him for a moment longer before letting go, only to flick him lightly on the forehead. But don't get cocky, you know. You still have a whole month ahead. Kaito laughed softly. I know. With that, he made his way to his room, peeling off his jacket before dropping onto his bed. Exhaustion washed over him almost immediately, but a slow smile tugged at his lips. Tomorrow, his final preparations would begin. And this time, he'd make sure nothing, not Root, not Danzo, not even fate, would blindside him again. Team 11 was going to shake the entire world. The night passed quietly, a rare calm settling over Konoha as lantern lights flickered gently in the streets outside Kaito's window. He slept soundly, exhaustion from the day's brutal training pulling him under like a warm tide. But morning arrived far too soon. A crack of sunlight crept through the curtains, brushing over Kaito's face until he groaned awake. His entire body felt stiff, bruised, and sore from fighting 4 of his own shadow clones at full power. Still, he forced himself out of bed, stretching until his spine popped. After a quick shower and breakfast prepared by Kushina, who only smiled knowingly when she saw the fatigue on his face, Kaito headed out toward the training grounds. He expected silence. He expected an empty field. He expected to arrive early. Oh, he was wrong. Very wrong. Because the moment he stepped into the clearing. Good morning, youthful Kaito. A voice louder than a battlefield explosion boomed across the entire training field. Birds fled in a panic. Leaves trembled. The earth itself seemed to cringe. Kaito's eye twitched. Standing in the center of the training ground was a man in a bright green jumpsuit, hands planted on his hips, one leg lifted dramatically, sunlight gleaming behind him like some divine beacon of energy. Might Guy. legendary taijutsu master, and certified menace to eardrums. Kaito stared blankly as Guy grinned at him with the full force of the sun. "So you are Kakashi's student for the month," Guy declared, giving a thumbs up so enthusiastic it practically shook the air. "I, Maito Guy, lover of youth and flames of passion, shall take good care of you." Kaito swallowed. "Yeah. Intense was an understatement." Hi," Kaito said lightly. "Thanks for helping me out, Guy-sensei. It is my duty to support the youth of our great village," Guy announced proudly, thrusting his fist into the sky. The pose was so dramatic that a gust of wind swirled around him even though nothing else in the area moved. Kaito blinked. Wind release? No, that was just Guy. Guy then leaned forward suddenly, eyes shining. "But before we begin," Kaito tensed. "We must warm up," Guy shouted, dropping instantly into a perfect handstand. 500 handstand laps around the perimeter of the training ground. Kaito stared. "Oh hi," he croaked. Guy nodded vigorously, still upside down. Taijutsu is built on a foundation of unbreakable endurance. Only by pushing past the limits of the flesh can you ignite the true flame of youth. Kaito exhaled slowly. So Kakashi wasn't exaggerating, he muttered to himself, stretching his arms as he resigned himself to his fate. His training really is insane. Guy's voice boomed again. "Now then. Begin, youthful Kaito." Yeah, okay," Kaito sighed as he flipped into a handstand. "Let's do this." 2 hours later. Kaito collapsed onto the ground, completely drenched in sweat, his arms trembling uncontrollably. He could barely lift a finger, let alone stand. Guy landed beside him gracefully, not even breathing hard. "Splendid work, Kaito," he praised proudly. "You only collapsed 27 times. That is the mark of a true prodigy." Kaito groaned into the dirt. 27 times is still 27 times. "Exactly." Guy beamed. "That is 27 opportunities to grow stronger. Glorious." Kaito tried not to cry. Guy's expression then softened slightly, "Not by much, but enough. Kakashi told me you want to improve your taijutsu specifically for the finals. Is that correct?" "Hi," Kaito panted. "And you also want better control over your elemental chakra and the Rasengan." "Hi," he repeated. Guy nodded, dropping into a seated position beside him. "Then we will divide your training into 3 steps. First, taijutsu conditioning. Second, combat drills. Third, stamina and chakra capacity increases." Kaito forced himself to sit up, wincing. "Sounds reasonable. What about my elemental Rasengan?" Guy rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "For that, there is someone who can help you more than I can." Kaito blinked. "Someone else?" Guy smiled mysteriously. "A certain master of chakra control and finesse. Someone who has trained me more times than I can count." Kaito's eyes widened slowly as a realization formed. "No way. You don't mean..." Guy nodded solemnly. "Yosh. Kaito, you will be training with Might Guy." Kaito stared at him in dead silence. "That's you," he said flatly. Guy gasped dramatically. "Correct. And because of that, you will master both chakra flow and power through hard work alone. There is nothing more youthful than self-improvement through sweat and perseverance." Kaito resisted the urge to say, "Are you sure that wasn't Ibuki's quote?" Before he could respond, Guy jumped to his feet. "And now, onto the real training." Kaito froze. "Wait, what? That wasn't real." Guy grinned. "Warm-up is over." Kaito's soul left his body for a moment. "Guy-sensei," he whispered weakly, "please be gentle." Guy pointed dramatically toward the center of the clearing. "Kaito, today we begin Taichi 1000 kick routine." Kaito's face paled. "I'm going to die," he thought. Guy nodded approvingly, as if Kaito's terrified stare meant enthusiasm. Let the flames of youth guide us. Kaito could only groan as the next brutal round of training began. Kaito let out a small laugh as his stomach betrayed him again, earning another amused chuckle from his mother. Naruto bounced excitedly beside him, tugging at the edge of Kaito's shirt while staring eagerly at the picnic basket as if it contained the secrets of the universe. The three of them moved toward a patch of soft grass beneath a tall oak tree. Kushina hummed lightly as she spread out the blanket, her red hair swaying with the breeze. Naruto plopped down immediately, legs crossed, eyes fixed on the basket like a hungry fox. Kaito couldn't help the small warmth in his chest as he knelt to help his mother unpack the food. Kushina had prepared rice balls, fish rolls, a box of freshly cut fruits, and an entire extra bento packed just for Kaito, clearly anticipating his appetite after training. Naruto immediately grabbed a rice ball, stuffing his cheeks like a chipmunk. Kushina laughed softly, brushing crumbs off her younger son's face while shaking her head fondly. "Slow down, Naru-chan. You'll choke at this rate, you know." Naruto mumbled something that sounded suspiciously like "I'm starving," believe it, though it was difficult to understand through the mouthful of rice. Kaito reached for a piece of fish roll, taking a slow bite as he leaned back on his hands and let the breeze cool the sweat still clinging to his skin. He could still feel the dull ache in his muscles from sparring with Guy, but the food and company eased it. Kushina watched him for a moment, her violet eyes softening. "You look exhausted, Kai-kun. That Guy fellow, he didn't push you too much, did he?" Kaito let out a breathy laugh. Intense," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it was good training. I'll get used to it." And that wraps up today's episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother. Kaito's journey is only getting more intense, and the future of the ninja world is changing with every step he takes. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see what happens next, make sure to hit that like button, share the video with other Naruto fans, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Drop your theories in the comments. I love reading them. See you in the next episode.